Christianity, anti-LGBTQ politics, anti-immigration, traditional values. This is what Russia offers. And it's what many European populist leaders offer as well. Leaders who believe the West has become weak, lost its identity, and been betrayed by its own elites. Meanwhile, populist movements are growing stronger across Europe. In countries like Germany, they are already reaching record levels of support. They promise solutions to Europe's crisis. But the real question is whether this is truly a solution or simply an opening for Russian influence and the gradual dismantling of Europe's alliance system. Because these movements do offer change and Europe genuinely does need change. But do we really want Putin's people to be the ones bringing it? The rise of modern populism did not come out of nowhere. It was driven by economic crisis, globalization, and a growing identity crisis. After the 2008 financial crash, many people began to feel that the European Union was no longer solving problems, but had become part of the problem itself. Austerity, inequality, and mass migration strengthened the feeling that national identity and sovereignty were under a threat. This new populist wave was not built on a single ideology. It included right-wing, left-wing, and radical nationalist movements alike. What united them was a common enemy: the European Union, NATO, and the liberal international order. It was in this political climate that Putin's new direction emerged.
Мы видим, как многие евроатлантические страны фактически пошли по пути отказа от своих корней, в том числе и от христианских ценностей, составляющих основу западной цивилизации. Отрицаются нравственные начала и любая традиционная идентичность, национальная, культурная, религиозная или даже половая. Проводится политика, ставящая на один уровень многодетную семью и однополое партнерство, веру в Бога или веру в сатану.
Putin claimed that the West had lost its cultural and Christian roots, while Russia, he argued, had to return to traditional values, national identity, and a strong state. This was tied to the concept of sovereign democracy formulated in the mid-2000s by Vladislav Surkov. The idea was simple. The stability and sovereignty of the state mattered more than Western democratic norms. Out of this, a new civilizational model gradually emerged, a conservative alternative to liberalism, globalism, and multiculturalism. And Russia positioned itself as the leader of that new model. But this new civilizational model had to be built first, and state-controlled media played a key role in that process. Channels like RT, Sputnik, and RIA Novosti constantly reinforced the image of a decaying West. For that narrative to work, concrete examples were needed. Angela Merkel's decision to open Germany's borders to more than 1 million asylum seekers, many of them from Syria. Western laws and cultural changes related to LGBTQ issues. Or the perception that Europe and the United States appeared weak in dealing with mass migration and Islamic terrorism. According to the Kremlin's narrative, the West itself had destabilized the Middle East and created the chaos of the Arab Spring. Putin presented himself as the opposite of that, a defender of Christian values, and as the leader of the only major power that had been willing to take decisive action against ISIS. He also introduced the so-called gay propaganda law, which became a model admired by many populist and religious conservative circles across Europe. Russian media also gave a platform to European populist politicians. Marine Le Pen, Nigel Farage, and Matteo Salvini regularly appeared on these channels. For many Western populists, Russia no longer looked like a threat. It looked like a real alternative to what they saw as a declining West.
Была и откровенно колониальная интерпретация. Есть некий цивилизованный мир, который служит образцом для остальных. Все должны следовать этим стандартам, этим образцам. А кто не согласен, тех загонят в цивилизацию дубинкой просвещенного господина. Эти времена, как я уже только что сказал, прошли.
But ideology itself was never the most important part. What truly mattered was that Russia understood something fundamental. Its biggest obstacle was not individual countries, but alliance systems like the European Union and NATO. That is why Moscow's relationship with populist movements became so important, not to build a new civilization together, but to weaken Western alliances from within. They became Putin's Trojan horses. These allies openly aligned themselves with Russian interests on a number of key issues, especially when it came to the European Union, NATO, and sanctions against Russia. Populist parties regularly argued that the sanctions were not hurting Moscow, but damaging their own national economies instead. Energy dependence played a major role in this. Russia was a critical energy supplier for several European countries, and the Kremlin turned that dependence into political influence. After the 2014 conflict in Ukraine, relations between the European Union and Russia began to steadily deteriorate. The 2022 invasion only intensified that process even further. Moscow faced growing accusations of interfering in Western democratic systems, yet many populist movements across Europe continue to openly support Russian positions. There were few scandals too. Just a few examples. In Italy, the Lega party was linked to the so-called Russiagate affair. In Austria, the leader of the Freedom Party of Austria was forced to resign after a major scandal involving alleged Russian connections. And yet, despite all of this, populist movements continue to grow stronger. From here, two possible futures emerge. One possibility is that the European Union continues to weaken and Europe becomes increasingly vulnerable to Russian influence. The other is that the European Union strengthens its institutions, reduces its energy dependence, and takes a more unified stance against Russia. Until it becomes clear which direction Europe will take, a long period without open conflict is likely to continue. A period where the political, economic, and information war never truly stops.